Alright, now that that beautiful commercial is over, let's head on to the actual topic of the video.
Thank God, bro.
iRecorder sneaked in malicious code after Google Play Store approval. Now, you might want to check your phone after this first one. Nah, I'm just kidding. Most of these are taken down. Back in September of 2021, a developer uploaded what seemed like a totally innocent screen recording app to the Google Play Store.
Okay.
The app was called iRecorder Screen Recorder, and it did...
And I got a fucking ad for it, bro. That's how long you yapped for and stored for.
Did exactly what you'd expect. It just helped people record their screens. For almost a year, everything was completely normal. Users downloaded it, left reviews, and the app quietly built up its loyal user base. By March of 2023, it had racked up over 50,000 installations. People trusted it because it was doing its job. It's literally a basic screen recorder app, or at least that's what they thought. Then, around August of 2022, the developer pushed out what looked like a routine update, version 1.3.8. Users who had the app set to auto-update probably didn't even notice. I mean, who pays attention to every single app update notification, right? What those 50,000 users didn't know was that this harmless update had secretly turned their phone into a surveillance device. The researchers at ESET discovered that the new version was now recording 1 minute of audio from their microphone every 15 minutes and uploading it to some unknown server. And that wasn't even the worst part. It was also stealing files from their phones, specifically targeting documents, photos, videos, and basically anything that might contain sensitive information. The malicious code was based on something called AMyth, which is essentially a toolkit that lets hackers remote control Android devices. And yes, the remote control bit in general, had been going on for a while. Anyway, the researchers named this customized version ARAT, and what made it so sneaky was that it operated within the app's existing permissions. Since iRecorder already needed microphone access to record screens, users had no reason to be suspicious. So they had been spied on for a while without having the slightest idea. Well, at least until ESET noticed. They alerted Google, and they took the app down from the Play Store. The thing is, we still don't know who was behind this or why they did it. The targeting of specific file types suggests it might have been part of some espionage campaign, but there's no concrete evidence pointing to any particular group. What we do know is that it's extremely rare for developers to wait almost a year before weaponizing their apps like this. It happens, but clearly in this case, these criminals must have had a lot of patience. Shein would regularly act as the clipboard. Alright guys, I looked it up. It's pronounced Shein. Alright, so I don't want to hear Sheen. I looked it up. Apparently it's Shein. Okay? The more you know. I know people already...
Of course it's Shein, because look how it's spelled at the bottom. She is in my bedroom right now. Yeah, do I mean?
They don't like the company due to their practices, but today we're going to be talking about them accessing your clipboard. Now, like I said, Shein is known for its low-costing products. But while users were hunting for deals, Shein was hunting for something else, your clipboard data. So here's what happened. Microsoft researchers discovered that an older version of the Shein Android app, specifically version 7.9.2 from December of 2021, was secretly recording everything users copied to their clipboard. And we're talking about everything. Passwords, credit card numbers, personal messages, literally whatever you copied and were about to pay somewhere else. Let me show you how this worked with this graphic, courtesy of Microsoft. So when you'd start or resume the Shein app, it would go through this whole chain of processes that eventually led to something called Market Clipboard Phase Linker. This sneaky little function would check your clipboard text for specific character sequences, $signs, and forward slashes. If it found what it was looking for, boom, your clipboard content would get sent as a parameter to their servers at a URL that resolved to something like api-service.jshein.com. At the time, Shein had over 100 million downloads on Google Play, and that means that over 100 million people had no idea their copy and paste activity was being monitored. Microsoft was careful to say they weren't aware of any malicious intent, but honestly, why would a shopping app need to know what you're copy and pasting? And also, why a $sign and a forward slash? Well, think about it. Secure passwords usually require you to use those special characters, which makes it pretty suspicious that Shein was specifically looking for that. And again, this is just my opinion here, but there's probably a more technical reason or explanation from them, but that was never shared. Anyway, the good news is that by May of 2022, Shein apparently got the message and removed this clipboard spying behavior from their app. It's crazy. That's a real sentence. Is it that crazy? Actually, I don't think that's crazy. No, it's Shein. The happy ending was that Google implemented better protections. Starting with Android 12, your phone will now notify you when an app tries to access your clipboard for the first time. And with Android 13, clipboard content's automatically clear after a while for extra protection. Ring harvested too much data and had access to camera live feed. You can see a lot of terrifying things through a Ring doorbell camera, and we actually already have 2 videos on that exact topic if you want to check it out after this one. Anyway,
no, I do not. I've seen those videos and the thumbnails, and I do not care about those sort of videos because I'm too much of a pussy to watch them, because I don't like anything like that because of anxiety reasons, so I just stay the fuck away from that kind of content.
And here is yet another terrifying thing about Ring. They were caught pants down spying on people. So back in 2020...
With their pants down? Hey, yo, were they masturbating to people getting broken into or some shit? Like, what the hell? What do you mean by pants down, caught with their pants down spying on people? That's kind of sus from Ring, if I may say so myself.
The Electronic Frontier Foundation decided to take a closer look at Amazon's Ring app for Android, and what they found was that the app wasn't just recording what was happening at your front door, it was harvesting a massive amount of your personal data and sharing it with third-party companies without you having any clue about it. Every time you open your Ring
That's
app...
probably for advertisement reasons, knowing Amazon, so I'm not surprised.
Facebook got an alert. When you performed certain actions on your device, that information was being sent to these analytics companies. Mixpanel was getting your full name, email address, device data, and app settings. And AppsFlyer was receiving data from your phone's sensors, including the gyroscope and magnetometer. And you couldn't turn this off. There was no setting to disable this tracking, no notification asking for your consent, nothing. The EFF found that this data was being sent over encrypted connections in a way that made it really hard to detect what was actually being shared. The thing is, in case you don't see how this is problematic, even these small bits of data can be combined to create what's essentially a digital footprint of your habits across different apps and devices. So these companies were potentially building comprehensive profiles of Ring users. Now get this. This wasn't Ring's first privacy scandal either. Earlier that same year, it came out that Ring employees had been caught accessing live feeds from customer cameras. The company actually had to fire 4 employees who had abused their access to spy on customers. There were also reports that engineers and executives had, quote, highly privileged access, end quote, to live camera feeds. Then, just a month before the EFF investigation, there was another massive breach where the credentials of over 3,600 Ring customers were exposed online. This leak included login emails, passwords, and even the names people gave their cameras, which often revealed exactly where the cameras were located, like bedroom or front door. The response from Amazon was pretty much the typical corporate line about using third-party services to improve their app experience. TikTok. Copied stuff from the clipboard every few seconds. So far we've talked about some security flaws over on Android, so I guess it's about time to bring iOS over to the conversation. And that's where we bring up TikTok. So here's what happened. Back in June of 2020, Apple released a beta version of iOS 14, and one of the new features was this clip.
Why can't you stay organised? I've experienced this myself, and it's called chronic impulse control.
Well, how do you know I can't stay organised, man? I am a very organised person, bro.
Where you
Fuck
prioritise
off out
short
of here.
Board notification system.
Telling me that I can't stay organised when I stay organised 24/7. Nobody is on my level of organisation skills. You know what I mean?
That would alert users whenever an app was accessing their clipboard data. Well, beta testers started noticing that they were getting constant notifications that TikTok was reading their clipboard every few seconds. To make it worse, you should know that Apple has this universal clipboard feature, which means if you copy something on your Mac or iPad, it's automatically available on your iPhone, and if you copy something on your iPhone, it's automatically available on your iPad or Mac. So if TikTok was running on your phone while you were working on other devices, that app could theoretically potentially access passwords, work documents, sensitive emails, financial information, basically anything you copied anywhere in your Apple ecosystem. When TikTok got called out, their response was, well, let's just say it kept changing. First, they blamed it on an outdated Google Advertising SDK and promised they were updating it. Then, when they got caught again with iOS 14, suddenly their excuse shifted to it being a, quote, feature designed to identify repetitive spammy behavior, which I guess from the end of a typical consumer on the app makes no sense. I mean, how does reading your clipboard every few seconds become necessary for spam detection? Anyway, the company quickly rushed out an updated version, removing this anti-spam feature, but the damage was already done, and they had been found out. It remained known that they had been secretly monitoring clipboard activity for who knows how long. And they only stopped when Apple's new privacy features made it impossible to hide.
I want to say something, but...
Toe Talk.
Thank you. So, I'm not surprised that TikTok has been monitoring you. It's literally a Chinese company. That's what I've been holding back with all my might. Waiting for this man to stop talking, bro. Yeah, it's a Chinese company. I'm not surprised that they're spying on you. That's what literally China does to everybody. All their citizens and anyone that uses TikTok. That's why I don't do TikTok on my computer. I only do it on one device, and that device is one of my other devices. You know what I mean? It's my laptop, yeah. I don't care who knows what I'm doing on my laptop, because I aim to scar people for life over there. That is why I go to like really weird ass, like I watch a lot of weird porn, I'm not gonna lie. So that's, anyone that's spying on me would be scarred for life, and that's my goal in life, is to scar at least one person for life, because they shouldn't be looking and spying on my device. They shouldn't be screen peeking, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Could track everything, including conversations. Next up is ToeTalk.
What's
and yes,
that?
it might sound similar to TikTok, but it's a completely different app, and no, it has nothing to do with feet or toes. I wish it did, though. I'm just kidding.
But is it from China, though? Is it another Chinese app that's spying on us? It's not spying on me, because I've never heard of ToeTalk. I've only heard of one talk, and that's TikTok. Like a clock.
Hey guys. So, while TikTok messed up with their privacy settings, this one is actually way worse.
Oh, it's
We're
a
talking
video
about
calls and chats app. Kind of like Chat Roulette or Omegle or WhatsApp.
messaging app that was literally designed from the ground
Never
up to
heard
be a
of it.
government spying tool. Back in 2019, this messaging app going by the name ToeTalk launched and quickly became super popular.
Oh, so
especially
it's a messaging app like WhatsApp. You can FaceTime on there and do all sorts on there. Got it.
in the UAE, that is the United Arab Emirates. And honestly, it makes sense why people were downloading it. The app promised fast, secure calling and messaging, plus it offered free unlimited video and voice calls. For people in the UAE, this was particularly appealing because their government actually blocks popular communication apps like Skype and WhatsApp. Rest in peace to Skype. But personnel at the New York Times discovered that ToeTalk wasn't just another messaging app. It was allegedly a sophisticated spying tool being used by the UAE government to monitor its citizens and anyone else who downloaded it. The app could track almost everything on your device. Every movement, conversation, sound, image, appointment, and relationship of anyone who installed it. It didn't offer end-to-end encryption, so all this data was basically being served up on a silver platter. The privacy policy only addressed data storage, not data protection, which should have been a massive red flag. Yet, this isn't exactly a hack. In fact, they didn't even need to hack anyone. The app just asked for all the right permissions, and people gave it up willingly, which was contacts, video calls, location data, everything.
So it's the user's fault that they got access to all this information. Got it.
It was like giving an intelligence agency full access to your life without them ever having to lift a finger. Because why break in when you can just get invited?
True.
Adware Doctor was not...
Most people don't read the privacy policies or any of those policies because reading is too time consuming. They'll just click accept and worry about the consequences later.
number one on the apps.
To create -196, we
I don't
freeze
care,
the whole
Mr.
level
Doctor.
to -196
I've never heard of that
degrees
drink.
before fusing
I do not care.
Store, but still stole user data. This was the number one paid utility app on the Mac's App Store. Adware Doctor marketed itself as the best app to prevent malware and malicious files from infecting your Mac.
Let me guess, they were the ones that were injecting your MacBook with all malicious malware and files and that lot. That's wild, bro, if that's what they were doing. Let's find out what they were doing.
Users thought they were getting premium protection for their computers. It was ranked as the 4th most popular paid app on the entire Mac App Store, so clearly people trusted it. Now here's the big irony in all of this. While users thought they were being protected, Adware Doctor was actually stealing their browsing history and sending it to a server in China without their knowledge or consent.
Well, there goes your porn. And I had an interview before at an Apple store, and that's not even a joke. Like, somebody, the hiring manager told me about how many times people would be coming in because they downloaded something suspicious that was obviously like so they could jack off, and they pretended that they didn't know where all these pop-ups were coming from. Yeah, I'm sure you didn't, bro. Like, I know about pop-ups too. It's called every single porn site has them. But only the difference is I don't download porn, I literally just watch it. So I'm kind of safer than the people that download it, because you don't always know what's hidden in those files. So that's why I go with the browser version of porn, not the downloading version of porn. So yeah, so all your porn got exposed to China like Rip Bozo. That's why you don't use MacBooks. I blame Apple for that one.
2018.
I don't blame this app, I blame Apple.
Privacy is first, noticed something fishy about the app's behavior and even uploaded this video showing exactly how it was exfiltrating user data. The research...
And if you don't know why I blame Apple, it's because that app shouldn't be, or any app like that shouldn't be on their app store. I would blame Google for the same reason if they had an app like this on their store. Like, it's their responsibility to do background checks on these apps. It's their fault for being lazy, basically, was what I'm trying to say.
Immediately reported this to Apple, but they did absolutely nothing about it for an entire month. Enter Patrick Wardle, a former NSA staffer with some free time. Together they ended up finding a pretty sophisticated system. Adware Doctor was bypassing Apple's sandbox restrictions, basically the security barriers that are supposed to prevent apps from accessing sensitive data and collecting browsing histories from Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. And the way it worked was actually quite clever from a malicious standpoint. Since Adware Doctor was supposed to be an anti-malware tool, it had a legitimate reason to request access to users' files and directories for, quote, scanning purposes.
True.
But once users clicked allow and gave it permission to access their home directory, the app had basically unlimited access to everything on their Mac. The app would then compress all this stolen browsing data into zip archives and upload them to a Chinese server at yellowbap.com. So while users thought they were getting their computers cleaned of adware, they were actually having their entire browsing history harvested. It wasn't until Wardle published his research and media outlets picked up on the story that Apple finally took action, removing the app from the store. Outlook and others gave hackers camera and mic access. So, are you a Mac or a Windows user? So, if you're
I'm a Windows user.
a Mac user that still uses Windows apps on that Mac, you could very well have been getting spied on through your camera at some point.
Oh, poof. This is only to Apple users. That's why I don't use Apple. I don't trust the Apple that's been bitten because there's normally a snake inside that. So yeah, I'm a Windows user, so this doesn't affect me. Thank God, bro. My heart started beating out my chest. You didn't even feel it, but I fucking did, and it did not feel good. I thought I was going to die like the same way that Bray Wyatt died, like for a second there, man. But at least I know I'm good because this affects the Apple users. If you're an Apple user, well, you got spied on, buddy. You got caught red-handed with your pants down, bro.
So some serious...
Caught in 4K with your pants down is the most embarrassing thing I can ever think of, especially coming from somebody that doesn't be packing that heat. He be packing that little bit of a sausage. I'm not gonna lie about my
Microsoft
genitalia.
apps on Mac OS.
I'm an
Popular apps
honest
that
guy.
everyone uses. We're talking Teams, Excel, OneNote, Outlook, etc. I mean, these are the kind of apps people use constantly every single day, especially at work. Now, normally Macs have this system called TCC, Transparency, Consent, and Control. It's Apple's way of making sure apps ask for permission before tapping into sensitive stuff like your camera or microphone. And if an app doesn't get that green light, it's locked out. However, flaws in the TCC basically let hackers skip that whole permission system. They could sneak in, bypass the rules, and get access anyway. So yeah, your MacBook in such a situation could be quietly recording you, video, audio, the whole thing. Literally while you're sitting in a Teams meeting or replying to emails in Outlook. But how exactly
Or jerking the snake?
did they do this in this particular case? Well, by installing shady code libraries that manipulated permissions so they could wiggle their way into restricted areas. No alerts, no pop-ups.
So what do you want to do in
Well, me calling the owners of of Apple's snakes because, like, I referenced the apple and the snake being inside it, that wasn't actually that far from the truth.
Do you like chickens? How about some more chickens?
Go away, man.
Signs. What's even worse,
Goofy
when
ass
these flaws
advert.
were first reported, Microsoft brushed it off and called it a low-risk issue. Now, I don't know about low risk. I mean, hijacking cameras and mics sounds pretty concerning. Although, to be fair, they said it's low risk because attackers first needed to get those shady libraries onto your device. Difficult, but that's not exactly impossible these days. Eventually, Microsoft updated things. OneNote and Teams got better protections on Mac OS. But yeah, someone somewhere in the world had unchecked access to lots of these webcams and mics. The Truth Spy. Vietnam-based apps secretly save users' GPS location and pictures. Are you the type of person that gets paranoid of being watched? Well,
No.
this next story might make you feel a little bit more justified about
I
that.
don't really care about being watched. Like, that's why I live stream, and that's why I do Kick, YouTube, TikTok, because I don't care about being watched. The only time that I'd care about being watched is if my webcam could see my hand moving up and down and you know what I'm doing. I'm getting freaky up in this room. You know what I mean? But other than that, no, I don't really care about being watched.
Paranoia. So there's this Vietnam-based app called the Truth Spy that was supposed to help people secretly monitor phones, but it turns out the app was doing some disturbing spying of its own. This app is what's called stalkerware. Basically, an app that runs silently in the background and collects data from whoever's phone it's installed on. The company behind it, OneByte, marketed it as having over 8 dozen features like monitoring communication apps, recording ambient conversations, and siphoning off photos through something they call a control panel. The app was available on both Google Play and the Apple Store, and it worked pretty simply. You'd install it on someone's device, like your cheating partner, or partner you're suspicious of, guess that makes more sense, and it would upload all their data to the Truth Spy servers, and then you could just log in and view everything they've been doing. How about that? What a perfect solution to what seems like a healthy relationship, am I right, guys? So that's how it was until security researchers discovered that the Truth Spy had a massive data breach that exposed users' GPS locations, photos, and other sensitive information. And we're not just talking about adults here. The leaked data included pictures of minors and babies that were stored on the users' phones, and anyone could view those exposed images by just visiting a specific URL on the Truth Spy's website.
Why would somebody have exposed images of babies and minors?
Which obviously I won't be sharing with you.
Yeah, they're kind of sus people, bro, if they are taking a photo of their kids, like, all hanging out stuff, man. Like, bro, like, that's something that you don't take pictures of, man, because otherwise you might risk getting a visit from the FBI. Like, holy fucking shit, man. There's people out there that's literally taking photos of their own kid, be all up in their grill, like, naked as fuck, and it's like, what kind of parent would want to look at that every single day when they're just scrolling through their frigging camera feed?
But this wasn't the
or
first
camera
time.
reel. That's kind of weird. Those parents are weird and they need to be investigated ASAP, man.
And the app messed it up. In 2018, a hacker broke in and stole a ton of user data. He even said they cared more about spying than keeping anyone's info safe. Ironic, isn't it? Now, apps like these are easy to download, turning anyone into a spy. But keep in mind that if you use them, you're not just risking someone else's privacy, you're giving your own info to sketchy companies. La Liga.
That's probably why you should just download it on your significant other's phone and not your personal phone. That's probably a reason to do that. If you want to use that phone for spying. But if you're trying to spy on others, then karma's a bitch, and what goes around comes around, and you get spied on. So they just gave you karma at that point. You know, don't try to spy on people. That's the message of that last story.
App. Recorded audios of soccer fans in bars. Now, if you're a football or soccer fan, you've probably downloaded your favorite league's official app to keep
No, I have not, because I'm not a loser. I just watch soccer on television if I want to watch soccer. I don't care about keeping up with the news of who's the new signing and that lot. I will find that out when I turn on the news and they're like, breaking news, big signing. This player has gone from this club to that club. And I'm like, okay, that's a very good player if they signed Messi. Very shit player if they signed Ronaldo, though.
Lack of scores and player stats. But what if I told you that one of the world's biggest soccer leagues was secretly using their app to spy on fans? That's exactly what happened with La Liga, Spain's top soccer league. Their official app, downloaded over 10 million times on Android, seemed like any regular sports app. You know, schedules, scores, player rankings, the usual. But hidden inside the app was something sneaky. It was secretly using your phone's mic and GPS to listen in when you were at bars or restaurants during matches. Sort of like Shazam for songs, but instead of identifying music, it was trying to catch places illegally broadcasting La Liga games without paying for the rights.
That's understandable, though, because it's trying to prevent piracy. So that's understandable why it would switch on your microphone and be like, are you watching on your own TV or someone else's? That is piracy. But I'm pretty sure most of these bars have licenses to show soccer matches because they're supposed to obtain licenses.
Here you are, chilling at your local sports bar with friends, watching the game, and your phone's basically eavesdropping on everything around you. Also, La Liga could hunt down businesses dodging their broadcast fees. This all came out right after new EU data protection rules kicked in, and fans were furious. The app's Android ratings tanked, and it blew up on Spanish social media. People felt totally betrayed, like their trusted sports app had turned into a spy device. And for a pretty greedy reason too. In the end, Spain's data protection agency hit La Liga with a €250,000 fine for not properly telling users what the app was doing. But La Liga
So they got fined just for trying to combat piracy, which is illegal. They were trying to keep the sport viewing legal and they got punished for it. What is this justice system?
their ground, saying they lose about €150 million a year to piracy. They insisted the technology was legitimate and that it didn't actually record or store conversations, just created, quote, acoustic fingerprints to detect illegal broadcasts. So apparently their best way to fight back was spying on all their users.
Yeah, that's the best way. Because people who are doing illegal stuff try to move in silence while doing that illegal stuff. They're like, let's spy in on this illegal activity and let's see what we find. So in my opinion, it's understandable why they were spying on you. But each to their own, I guess.
World Weather Accurate Radar collected too much info and even loaded pages for ad click fraud.
Ooh.
Checking the weather on your phone should be pretty straightforward,
I
right?
hope that's adult only porn clips, not fucking... I'm not trying to go to prison here.
You just want to know if it's going to rain tomorrow and if you're going to need a jacket. Well, it turns out that one weather app was doing more than just predicting precipitation. The app was called Weather Forecast World Weather Accurate Radar, and with over 10 million downloads from Google Play, it was pretty popular. Made by TCL Communication Technology Holdings, a Chinese company that manufactures Alcatel and BlackBerry smartphones, this app came pre-installed on many budget devices, especially in emerging markets. But as with some other similar ones, it turned sketchy. According to security firm Upstream Systems, this innocent-looking weather app was harvesting massive amounts of personal data from users, geographic locations, email addresses, and even IMEI numbers, those 15-digit codes that uniquely identify your device. Basically, they were collecting everything they could get their hands on and sending it all to servers in China. And that was just the beginning. The app was also pulling some seriously shady moves with ad fraud. It would secretly subscribe users to paid services for things like virtual reality content without their permission. Like, some people were checking their phone bill and finding charges for services they never signed up for. Well, that's at least what was happening to people in Brazil, Malaysia, and Nigeria. But it gets worse.
So that's theft. So that's one charge. Sending their data to China, like, I feel like nowadays every app is doing that, literally. But
Yeah.
that's probably because I'm a paranoid person.
It's also loading random web pages into the background, including sites, just to generate fraudulent clicks on advertisements. So not only was your weather app stealing your data and signing you up for paid services, it was also potentially exposing you to inappropriate content without your knowledge. This was one of the biggest cases here. In Brazil alone, Upstream Systems detected 2.5 million fraudulent transaction attempts from Alcatel devices in just July and August of 2018. These attempts originated from 128,000 unique phone numbers, and thankfully, most were blocked once the company discovered what was happening. TCL eventually stopped the subscription fraud after getting caught, but according to security experts, the app continued collecting user data even after that. It's a perfect example of how something as simple as a weather app can be turned into a massive data harvesting and fraud operation. Facebook's Project Ghostbusters snooped on user Snapchat traffic. Next up is Facebook. A name you...
This is another story that doesn't affect me because I don't use Snapchat, because I don't get the point of using Snapchat. I think it would be more useful if I actually had friends, but as you know, I don't have friends, so it's a pretty useless app to me, Snapchat is.
were probably expecting to show up in this video at some point. So you think Facebook only knows what you're doing on Meta apps? Well, think again. Because it turns out that Mark Zuckerberg's brainchild was running a secret operation to spy on what you were doing on Snapchat too. And
Isn't Snapchat a Meta app, or am I stupid? I think I'm stupid, actually.
probably the most on-the-nose codename ever, Project Ghostbusters. Honestly, kind of a hard name, because the Snapchat logo's a ghost. It's kind of cool. Anyway, name aside, this whole thing started back in 2016 when Zuckerberg allegedly sent an email to 3 Facebook executives and was basically like, hey, we can't figure out what people are doing on Snapchat because their traffic is encrypted, and that's a problem for us. You need to find a way to get reliable analytics about them. My words, of course, not the exact direct quote of the communication, so Facebook's engineers came up with a pretty clever and totally invasive solution. They decided to use Onavo, a VPN.
Sky Vegas. Get 50
Go away, Sky Vegas. Nobody wants to gamble over here.
Deposit spent
I don't want to gamble. I don't want to gamble. No, I'm not playing. No.
VPN service that Facebook had acquired from an Israeli company back in 2013. Now VPNs are supposed to protect your privacy, right? Well, Facebook turned theirs into the exact opposite. They created special kits that could be installed on iOS and Android devices to intercept traffic for specific apps. Since Snapchat's traffic was encrypted, Facebook couldn't just snoop on it directly. But with Onavo running on people's phones, they could read all the network traffic before it got encrypted and sent over the internet. Basically, Facebook was performing what's called a man-in-the-middle attack on its own users. When you downloaded Onavo thinking you were getting privacy protection, you were actually giving Facebook a front row seat to everything you did on your phone, including your Snapchat activity. And it wasn't just Snapchat either. Facebook later expanded this program to spy on YouTube and Amazon traffic too. They were essentially building...
Why is Mark Zuckerberg so fucking nosy, man?
...profiles of how people use competing apps, which gave them a massive advantage when it came to selling advertising and developing their own features. Facebook finally shut down Onavo in 2019, but only after Apple kicked the VPN out of its App Store, and TechCrunch revealed that Facebook had been secretly paying teenagers to use Onavo so they could access all their web activity. Tencent secretly kept users...
But, like, why is Mark Zuckerberg so nosy that he'll jump through any hoop just to know what someone's doing? Like, bro, what? Like, it's like this guy is addicted to spying on people.
Browsing history. Does this friendly little penguin look familiar?
No.
If you've ever, for any reason, used QQ Messenger, China's most popular instant messaging app...
Another app from China, and people trust it to not report back to the Chinese government, man. And then when it does, they act all surprised like, oh, my data! And I'm like, bro, you're literally downloading a Chinese app that probably has rules and regulations coming from the Chinese government saying that they have to legally report back to the Chinese government. I almost forgot their name just then.
You probably recognize this mascot right away, but what you might not know is that while you were busy chatting with friends, Tencent was quietly reading through your entire web browsing history. Yes, the entire browsing history. This whole scandal came to light in January of 2021 when some tech-savvy users on Zhihu, kind of like China's version of Reddit, started digging into the desktop version of QQ Messenger. There, they found that the app was...
If they spy on me, if Tencent spied on me to read my browser history, they'd get scarred for life, and they will wish that they never went into my browser history. And that goes for anyone on this planet. You will get scarred for life. Approach my browsing history with caution, because there are freaky shit on there, bro. You ain't ready for none of my freaky ass porn.
Actively scanning users' local files, specifically targeting SQLite files, where Chromium-based browsers store your internet history. So, QQ would search your computer for those browser history files, pull out your data, and scan it for certain keywords. If it found something that matched, it would phone home and send that info back to Tencent servers. In other words, every site you visited, every search you made, every click, it was all being logged. And you had no idea. Once this got exposed...
That reminds me of a song. Every step you take, every move you make, every time you masturbate, every time you go on Chatterbait, I'll be watching you. Yeah, that kind of song.
It blew up fast. Tencent rushed into damage control and released a statement claiming it was all about security. According to them, they were only scanning browsing history to check if malicious programs were using certain websites to target QQ users. They said it was for login protection and detecting suspicious behavior. But here's the thing. Even if that excuse were true, which turned out to be debatable, Tencent never told users they were doing this. And under China's own cybersecurity laws, browser history is considered sensitive personal information. QQ's privacy policy never mentioned anything about collecting it, which means they were basically violating their users' privacy without consent. Tencent later pushed out an updated version of QQ that removed this spying behavior and issued an apology. They insisted they weren't uploading any of the data to the cloud or using it for other purposes, but good luck trying to convince 647 million monthly active users about that. Tim Hortons, coffee app that kept granular location data. Now let's hop to Canada, because if you're Canadian, you probably know Tim Hortons as more than just a coffee shop.
I've been to Tim Hortons too, and I'm not Canadian. I've been to the one near me, which is in a different city near me. It's not exactly in my area, but it's in a different area. A undisclosed location. And it was a nice... they do nice burgers in the UK. they do nice like waffle fries in the UK, and they also do nice donuts in the UK, and they do nice soda in the UK, because that's everything that I had when I went to Tim Hortons in the UK.
Practically a national institution. And like most chains these days, they have a mobile app that lets you order and pay for your double-double before even walking through the door. Who would have thought that an innocent coffee app was doing more than just processing your order? Turns out the Financial Post started digging into Tim Hortons' app, and they found out that the app was secretly tracking users' locations constantly, like every minute, even when people weren't using the app at all. There's actually a term for this. It's something like granular location data, which is basically a fancy way of saying they knew exactly where you were at all times. Tim Hortons claimed they were collecting all this location data for targeted advertising and promoting their products. For example, if you had suddenly happened to be near a Tim Hortons, the app might have hit you with a tempting ad to go grab a nice strong coffee. But when privacy commissioners from British Columbia, Quebec, and Alberta launched a joint investigation, they found that Tim Hortons never actually used the data for those purposes, so they were violating people's privacies for literally no reason. With 4 million active users on the app, Tim Hortons was essentially conducting surveillance on millions of Canadians without their proper consent. And most of this data was collected when the app wasn't being used. They were just there, watching you, like a Psycho X or something. Now, trust me when I say that it was literally for no reason, at least on Tim Hortons' part. That's because those who went digging through all the fine print, including me, found that Tim Hortons was actually using a third-party service called Radar to handle all the location tracking. The investigation revealed that the contract between Tim Hortons and Radar had vague and permissive language, which basically could have let Radar use all that personal data for their own business purposes. I'm not saying Tim Hortons is innocent, but they definitely paved the way for someone else to get access to that data pretty easily. In the end, the company ended up facing several class action lawsuits over the whole mess. Real Networks stole data from Jukebox. This next one is a throwback. We're talking about 1999 here, when people were still burning CDs and dial-up internet was a thing. But it's proof that app spying on users isn't exactly a new phenomenon. Meet Real Networks and their Real Jukebox software, which was basically caught red-handed stealing your music listening habits way before Spotify even existed. So, it was the late 90s, and Real Jukebox was this free software that let you play music CDs on your computer and rip songs to your hard drive. Pretty revolutionary stuff back then, and that's not being sarcastic. What users didn't know was that every time they played a CD while connected to the internet, Real Jukebox was secretly phoning home with detailed information about their music preferences. Now, secretly is the key word here, because even if you already know that today's favorite algorithms work like this to give you content, the fact that they didn't ask you for permission back then, that's the very big deal about this. And that was exposed by Richard Smith, an electronic privacy expert who had a knack for catching tech companies doing shady stuff. Smith discovered that Real Jukebox was sending out information about what CD users were listening to, along with a unique player ID that essentially identified who they were. The software also reported how many songs were stored on their hard drive, what type of MP3 player they were using, and their overall music preferences. When users registered Real Jukebox, they were assigned what's called a Globally Unique Identifier, or GUID, basically their own serial number. This number was encrypted and stored in the Windows registry, but Smith figured out that it was the exact same number being sent to Real Networks along with all that music data. With around 13 million registered users at the time, Real Networks was basically this massive database of people's music tastes. And since some users had paid for Real Jukebox Plus, the company also had their credit card information. So they potentially knew your real identity, your musical preferences, and your payment details all tied together with that unique identifier. And remember what I said about everything being kept secret? Because Real Network's privacy policy didn't mention the GUID system at all. It was only after getting caught that they quietly updated their policy over a weekend to suddenly disclose this practice. But it wasn't enough. By then, the fire had already been lit. The public freaked out, and Real Networks had to apologize and put out a fix that stopped Real Jukebox from sending user data back to their servers.
I don't really know what Real Jukebox was, but I was guessing the reason why they'd be grabbing data to do with music was to probably make you a homepage list of songs you might like, kind of like people you may know on Facebook, but on this music app, as songs you might like. You might also like this artist. Just like on Steam, where they say, you might also like this game. It's like, yeah, that's what I was thinking they'd be using the data towards, but then I heard them pulling credit card information or debit card information, and I was like, why would they need that? So yeah, that's quite... Some things that they do were kind of shady, and then other things you're like, aren't they just grabbing it so they can recommend you certain songs and certain music? Nobody knows the intentions of other people and their apps. And that's the point of this video. That app might be spying on you, because like I just said, what would they need card information for and all that private information for when it's a music app? All they'd need is your taste in music, so they can recommend you other music, so you have a endless stream of music to listen to when you visit that app. But yeah, card information, my only guess is they'd only need that information is if the app was premium. Like I said, I don't know what Real Network was, and I'm glad I'd never used it by the sound of what they were doing with your data.
PC rental agent recorded users having sex.
Ooh.
Now this last one
That's my sort of app, bruh.
is potentially the most disturbing one on this list. So, computer rental services. Not really a thing anymore. Maybe you can find some of them, but for the most part, not really a thing anymore. So back in the day, if you needed a computer temporarily, you could go rent a laptop. Same way you could rent DVDs. But in 2012, some of these computers were secretly watching your every move. And
I think they replaced that with buy now, pay later scheme. So yeah, I think it's just a different it's just a different model nowadays, rather than like straight up renting someone else's PC. You now have buy now and pay later, so I think that's kind of like the modern version of renting PCs and computers.
I mean everything in the literal sense, including sex. This spying behavior apparently happened to hundreds of thousands of people thanks to something called PC Rental Agent, a software that was installed on about 420,000 computers worldwide across 1,617 rent-to-own stores in the US, Canada, and Australia. The software was made by a company called Designerware and was supposed to help rental companies track their equipment if customers were late on payments or failed to return the computers. Practical for business owners, right? But the software also had this feature called Detective Mode. It would activate when rental companies decided to spy on their customers. PC Rental Agent was capturing everything: keystrokes, screenshots, passwords for email and social media accounts, bank information, social security numbers, medical records, private emails to doctors, and even credit card statements. And yes, it was also secretly taking photos through the webcam without any indication that the camera was on. Some of the webcam photos they found included kids, people partially undressed, and like I mentioned, couples caught in intimate moments right inside their homes. How exactly did they get this personal info?
Bro, like, they were literally trying to know every last thing about you. That is crazy. I'm glad I never used that app. And I see why people would have used that app. If you don't have enough money for like a computer, then you can just rent a computer for half the price probably, or even a more in your budget kind of price, and then like pay them later, kind of like buy now pay later scheme. But that app just wanted to know an endless stream of your personal life. They wanted to be inside of you. They wanted to be a ghost going inside of you and live your life and see the world from your eyes, basically. So they wanted to know your medical record. They wanted to know like your social security number, which is I think a national insurance number over here. They want to know literally your last detail. They wanted to know your blood type. They probably want to know the whole shebang about you. That's crazy. So that's the most invasive app on this list, and that's probably why it's number one.
Oh, well, they were sneaky about it. The software would pop up fake registration screens that look legit, asking users to type in their name, address, phone number, normal setup stuff, private data that went straight to those rental companies. In the end, 7 rent-to-own companies had to settle with the FTC over this huge privacy breach. And
but they asked for your address, so they could send loan sharks to you for not buying their product. They'll be like, can't pay, we'll take it away. And that's probably what they did. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't around in the PC rental era of life. I was only around in the buy now pay later era of life. Because I'm young, even though I'm almost 30. Damn near 30 actually. Getting older and older by the second.
Software Designerware went bankrupt. But by then, hundreds of thousands of people had already had their most private moments recorded recorded and sent to total strangers.
Please send it to me. I want to. Only the adults though that were getting intimate, not the other weird stuff that they were recording you doing. Just the intimate adult moments. They have to be 20 and up for me to watch that. Actually, let's higher that bar. 27 and up for me to watch that. Actually, let's higher that bar so I don't get into any trouble. 50 and up. Actually, higher that bar 100 and up. Just send me the grannies and granddads having sex, just so I don't get in trouble for processing that kind of imagery, because then you know damn well that they're within age to be shared with me.
Alright guys, that's going to be it for this video.
Okay.
If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like. If you think I earned your subscription, it would be awesome if you could subscribe. And in case you didn't know, I live stream over on Twitch pretty regularly. It's twitch.tv/Tubington_. So if you want to shoot me a follow over there, that would be awesome.
No,
that being
thank you.
said, I'll see you guys next time I upload.
I don't really follow people because every time that I watch their video it gets onto my homepage anyway, so I don't really see a reason to follow people if they're going to be in my recommendations anyway, or if they're going to be stored in my brain anyway. I just watch them. It still helps them out, it still makes them money, I guess, for every single advert that I watched on this video, which was about like so many of them.